Now, we heard from the National Council for Curriculum and Assessment earlier in the show about the proposed new sex education curriculum. There will be a new curriculum. What's in it is still up for discussion, but it certainly is going to include elements of sexuality, LGBT relationships, contraception and consent. Here to discuss this further is Michael Nugent, Chairperson of Atheist Ireland, and Alan Whelan from the Catholic Secondary School Parents Partnership. Alan, I might start with yourself. It has been mooted that there would be an option for schools, religious schools, to opt out of elements of the curriculum. Would you agree with that?
Oh, well, that is what is being said. The Minister, Joe McHugh, has listened to parents and has accepted that parents have a right to have their children educated in compatibility with their own values. He simply recognised that. That's been recognised through the ages, and thankfully, it has been reinforced by the Minister's statement of yesterday.
What elements of the curriculum, and look, it hasn't been nailed down yet, but we broadly know the areas it's going to stray into now that it didn't before. What areas in that would, say, parents of children in Catholic-run secondary schools, for example, might have issue with?
I can't say that there would be any in particular. I mean, I suppose the major aspect would be the fallacy that you can have something as an objective policy, you know, that values can be objective, that they cannot be measured. But our Catholic Secondary Schools Parents Association, we had a survey in relation to this RSE curriculum. There were 22 questions. We had 3,853 responses, all very, very positive in favour of a relationship and sex education programme.
Yeah.
These programs exist. My own children have had some fantastic, absolutely fantastic experiences and education. Our parents, we were brought in. I mean, the eldest girl here, she's just left school, but last year we went to the local presentation school, secondary school, and the quality of what we were told covered every aspect.
Okay. Let me go to... No, I appreciate that. Let me, sorry to cut across to Alan, but let me go to Michael Nugent on that of Atheist Ireland. Michael, Alan sounds fairly reasonable there. Have you an issue with this religious opt-out?
Well, there isn't a religious opt-out, and the Minister...
He suggested religious opt-out, we'll put it that way.
Yeah, but the Minister isn't reflecting either what's in the report or indeed what's in the law. The Department's policy from as back as far as 2010 is that students have a right to objective sex education, and that comes under Article 11 of the European Social Charter. And now the difficulty is that in Ireland, because of the Education Act, that right has to be implemented having regard to the ethos of the school. And so that's where the conflict arises, and that's why this review by the NCCA was set up, was to examine how objective sex education can be delivered consistently with that. And the only way that it can be is by amending the Education Act, which is what the Oireachtas Education Committee has already recommended, and there's already a bill going through the Oireachtas called the Objective Sex Education Act trying to do that. But what this report has done is that it essentially fudged that issue. But because instead of addressing the issue of how to deliver objective sex education, it's changed its phrase to comprehensive sex education, and says that there's a consensus that should be happening. But that's not... Because
I was going to ask you about that, because the word objective there that you use, and you said, look, that's been changed to comprehensive. A point Alan was making is, how do you be objective about values? That's a fair point, isn't it?
Well, if we take the European Social Charter, which we are obliged to follow, what it has found, or what the Council of Europe Committee on Social Rights has interpreted that as saying that it must be objective, based on contemporary scientific evidence, and does not involve censoring, withholding or intentionally misrepresenting information, for example, as regards to contraception or different means on maintaining sexual and reproductive health. So that's essentially what it means. It's not saying that there are no values, it's saying that it has to be objectively delivered. But in order to enable it to be objectively delivered, what has to happen is the Education Act has to be amended. Now, what the review says on that, it just describes the problem. It says the review concludes that at this point school ethos cannot be separated out from other factors that influence the teaching of RSE. Now that's true, of course, but the reason for that is that the Education Act protects the rights of the patron to give priority.
Okay. Can I go back to Alan on that? Alan, just from what you were saying initially, it sounds a little bit like you're happy that the box is ticked on the opt-out, but that in reality you don't see there being any objection to any aspects of that. Is that fair? Of what's suggested?
That's reasonable. That's reasonable. I mean, I think.
Well, why put it in there at all then? Like, because the religious opt-out kind of does become controversial.
Because when you get people like Atheist Ireland, and we know about atheists. The country that has atheism at its core is China. We've seen things there like one-child policy. We don't want that. We've seen how they have treated the Uyghurs Muslims, how they've tried to brainwash them, all in the notion of some form of objectivity. We don't want to go down that road.
Alan, are you saying that if schools can't opt out of teaching LGBTQ, we're going to round up Muslims and put them in prison camps? Like, it's a bit of a stretch from one to the other.
Sorry, I mean, I don't know where you're coming from. I mean,
you brought it up.
My youngest child, I never mentioned LBGTQT. My eldest child last week had a full session with a group who came into our Catholic school called Shout Out. And it was absolutely, as she tells me, perfect. We were consulted as parents in advance. Yeah. We knew what was happening. We were able to engage with our children. This sort of notion that people are putting up, I think, straw men to shoot down, they don't exist. Catholic schools are, I would say, as good as any other school in terms of their looking at issues to do with sex education, relationship education. I think that, if objective...
Let me go back to Michael on
studies
that.
Were done.
Michael, I'm sure you heard what Alan had to say there about the countries with atheism at the heart of their democracies, if you could call them democracies, certainly not China, I guess. Do you support the one-child policy?
No, well, of course, Alan's mask has slipped there a bit, and you can see what type of objective education you might get at the school that he was in charge of. But if I can go back to what the report says in terms of school principals, it quotes school principals as saying things like, I feel I have to be brave all the time, it's on my shoulders if the patron isn't happy. In essence, teachers have to be supported by the curriculum, the patron and the principal. There are discrepancies between ethos, parents, teachers, and what is actually needed by the children. Ethos is used as an excuse not to teach certain topics in areas. We have a pastoral Christian ethos in teaching in that framework. So that's what the report says that principals are saying about the issue. And it's clear that because of the department's own policy, that the only way to address it is to amend the Education Act so that children can get their right under the European Social Charter and indeed under the department's policy to objective sex education.
All right. Alan, I might leave a last word to yourself on this. Again, I'm sorry to do this now, but I kind of asking the same question. If you're saying that you don't really have any problem with how any of this is going to be taught, why have the opt-out at all?
Well, it is because of the context. It's because of the context. It's because of the false notion that Michael and his 500 members put forward to the rest of society expecting us to change. We have consulted our members. 3,853 spent the time filling in a survey and informing us. We represent their views. We represented them to the minister. And what is wrong with that? I can honestly assure you that the quality of relationship and sex education in the Catholic sector, particularly in the secondary sector, is outstanding.
All right. On that note, Alan Whelan from the Catholic Secondary School Parents Partnership and Michael Nugent, Chairperson of Atheist Ireland, thank you both very much for getting in touch.